Hi, I'm Ben,
I'm Kaci.
and we're Marriage and Manna. We're just testing out, starting this new podcast. It'll be episode one. So we're going to do kind of a fun subject today. We're going to talk about the temptations of Christ and how that can apply to your marriage and to uh, help you there not to be cheating, which I know is kind of a weird subject, but to start with. But I was just reading this and it just kind of resonated with me, and so I had some thoughts. In case he has no idea what we're gonna be, where I'm gonna go with this, so we're just gonna get her raw thoughts as I talk, and get her feedback on this. In Matthew 4, we have the four temptations that we see. The four examples of temptation that Satan tried with the Savior and how he resisted them. And I wanted to take those four temptations of how we could be tempted to um, to look outside the marriage for happiness. And I wanted to work backwards because the last one I think is kind of applies to everyone. So we're going to start the first, or we're going to start the last one, um, and yeah, and work all the way to the first one that it has in Matthew. Um, so I'm just going to read the scripture, and then I'm going to kind of elaborate on what my thoughts are, and you go ahead and share what you thought and how that applies also. Um, because we're starting the last temptation, Matthew 4, 8 through 9. And it said, "Again, the devil taketh him into an exceedingly high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world, and all the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me." And kind of my thinking is that these four temptations are almost to see if Christ will be loyal to God. And so in this very first one, right, this is straight up bow down, worship me, and I'll give you all these things. And kind of how I thought about that in marriage, and you tell me what you think about this, is that we can see all the glitter of the world, and kind of like, oh, I want to achieve this promotion, this get this education, get this, um, instead of looking at like our family to find happiness, and thinking that like, oh, well, we could have all these things instead of focus on the family, focusing on um, our jobs or our schooling or whatever that is, and all these wonderful things, right? Even down to become like a workaholic, or anything to ignore our family. What do you think about that, Casey?
Yeah, and more literally, I think there could be temptations for people to think somebody else could offer me more than the person I'm with. And there's always the side that you're not seeing
Mm-hmm.
of them. Because in the beginning, it's like when you're dating and it's your heart is a flutter and you're like you think they're the most amazing person in the world, and as you get to know them you see their flaws and you see your flaws, and so there's a temptation to think that other people are better
Oh,
or have more, and it's not true.
oh,
We all have our flaws, right?
right. Oh, that's a good one. I didn't even think about it that way. I was more thinking about just ignoring the family, but it's a really good insight. Um, and kind of to go along with that, like if you start to actually think that, kind of go along with the next verse. Says, and then Jesus saith unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is worship, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. And so, like, if you actually find yourself having those thoughts that, oh, this person has more to offer, maybe you'd be like, not literally say get thee hence, but to like push them away, be like, you know what? If since I'm starting to have those thoughts, I'm
You need to separate
I'm
and
just gonna separate. We're
distance.
not gonna talk anymore. Or if for some reason you're situation where you kind of force talk with them, you make a very limited amount of time,
Yeah.
right? Or very distant.
And I think like also practically with social media, like unfollowing people.
That's true.
I do that too. Like you have to unfollow certain people, um or how I also like I try to, this sounds bad, but like trying to limit your interactions with people um that are divorced or thinking about getting divorced.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I
I
was
think
just
is.
actually about to say
Oh,
that.
okay. Yeah, like another point to that of just it. It will like encourage your thoughts and your actions
Hmm.
instead of trying to save your marriage or improve your marriage, which is the goal.
Right. Especially now, you brought up social media, is people try to always put up that front of, oh, my life is so great. And so if you're looking and all your friends on Facebook or other social media are talking about how great it is to be divorced and how horrible
Yeah.
their spouse was, then you could be like, oh, maybe it is better on the other side of not even like finding somebody else, but just being by myself. Um, so just yeah, to go along with that, just kind of where once again you said there's always two sides, right? Like where if you hang around divorced people, they put up that front, then you might not see how much it actually sucks to be divorced.
Yeah. And and maybe we should have a disclaimer of some sort. Like there are definitely situations where I think divorce is better for both parties or like the safe like needs to happen for safety issues, but this podcast where we want to focus on people that want to get married and have a successful marriage.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, there are exceptions, right, where you should get divorced. But just from a book that I think we'll talk about um, another podcast, later episode, where he talks about where it's a marriage book, good advice, and he says, does your spouse have goodwill towards you and others, right? So if you are in that situation where like you might think like, oh, life would be better on the other side, but then you're like, does your spouse have goodwill towards you and others? Like they are a good person, they're not abusive, they're not whatever
Yeah, exactly.
extremes we could be talking about. If they're not that, then you really should be focusing on fixing your marriage.
Yeah, because there's definitely ways to improve that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Whereas others, there might not be a way for you to improve.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have any other thoughts on this temptation? Okay. So, so working backwards, we're going to go to Matthew 4, 5, and 7. It says, and the devil taketh him to a holy city, and setteth him on the pinnacle of the temple, and saith unto him, if thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. And just said, it is written again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. And kind of what I thought about this, two things is not to tempt your spouse, but in kind of a weird way of. So I always jokingly say these things to you, and I need to be better. Where I'm like, where you're like, I love you. I'm like, prove it. Like when we were engaged, I'm like, prove it, marry me, right? Like we were engaged. Obviously, we were gonna get married, and I was joking, right? And I'm like, oh, prove it. Take me to the temple. Like I make jokes like that, and I need to be better. But I think sometimes people find that they want to test the relationship of like, do we like, well, show me that you love me.
I think that's such a good point. Yeah, of like, oh, he doesn't open my car door, he doesn't love me, or he didn't give me a gift or do the dishes, he doesn't love me, and that's not what it is at all. And like good communication because people can't read your minds, especially your spouse.
Yeah.
So they don't know that that's like a sign you're looking for to say that
Yeah.
they love you. So I think that's such a good point of like testing your spouse. And it also made me think of I don't think we're as much this way, but I've seen people that are they're married but they're flirtatious.
Oh,
Like
with each other or with
no,
others?
with others, or
Oh.
like they have the work wife,
Oh yeah.
that kind of thing. And it's like it's a joke, but I really think like those kinds of jokes are too far.
Right.
Like because it could easily turn into something else and turn and be misinterpreted, and it's just not a good path to
Right.
be on.
Yeah. To go along with that, this is getting a little super nerdy and not in your interests, but there's a debate on role playing games, so like games like Dungeons and Dragons, where your character marries another person at the table's character, and then like so now you have a relationship, but that other character isn't played by your spouse, and so like there's that flirtation going on, but you're like, oh, it's just my character. Like there's also been I said D&D, but there's also that happens in like MMOs, these giant video games where like, oh yeah, my character's married to this person, and you just kind of, it's a joke. Obviously, you're not really married, but who knows where that leads to? Where you're just like, oh, well, their character treats me better than my spouse treats me, or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know that sounds ludicrous, but it's very possible. Like,
Because I think they're all just like seeds,
yeah,
right? And what grows is where you put your attention and what you water. And so if you're planting these bad seeds, they're gonna bring forth the bad fruit,
right.
right? But if you're growing and watering your marriage and each other, that's what's gonna grow.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, especially I think sometimes also I thought of this. I don't know how to word this, so I hope this will make sense. But uh, with Christ jumping off the building, it was like this extreme action that he was going to take. Right? There's no reason for him to jump off the building, but it's also the easy route of like seeing that your spouse loves you. Right? Where God's like, yeah, sends down angels and he floats down to the temple into a big crowd. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, that is the Son of God. He's been protected by God, right? And maybe testing your spouse of like, yeah, the big things of like, you do something extreme just to see how they'll react.
I think that happens with women of like trying to make their husbands jealous by doing something
Mm-hmm.
that might be a bit naughty, or like, yeah, flirting with some guy to make their husband jealous just so they could get attention from their husband is really
Right.
what it's about.
Yeah. So, are you ready to move on? Because
Yeah.
I think we can move on to the last temptation. This one was kind of the one that really set my thoughts off. So we're gonna read still in chapter 4, 1 through 4 of Matthew. And it says, "And thus Jesus was led up by the Spirit in the wilderness to be with God, and was tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward anhungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. And he answered, said, It is not written, Man shall live by bread alone, but from every mouth that proceedeth out of the mouth of God." And my thought with this is really what set me kind of my thinking is this is when Christ is at his lowest point, right? He is hungry. It's been 40 days, right, of him fasting and being with God. And so the biggest thing he wants at the moment is food, right? He's hungry. Well, he probably still wants to be with God, but like one of his big things, like his physical need is to be with God. And I thought about this, or don't put your spouse where they're fasting for 40 days unnecessarily and getting attention from you. And don't let them, I've also heard wander in the desert, be wandering in the desert of like hearing or being in a drought of like hearing a kind word, getting affection, having you serve them, you expressing love for them. Because if they end up in the wilderness wandering, then they might want to look outside the marriage thinking, oh, she or he isn't giving me these things. So but somebody else will. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? I so I don't know if we've all heard the 5 love languages of service, physical touch, words of affirmation, gift giving. Hold on, there you go. Time. That's the last one. Okay, quality time. And I thought I would give like 3 examples of this is like the past week or just a couple of days of all things that you've done to make sure that I'm not in the wilderness, and just to give some examples. One was that so I've been out of town for a little bit, working, and so you bought me a card, and in that card had like a nice message, right? And then you make sure to always tell me that like you love me, how much you're proud of me. So like when I'm not around you, if I'm around another woman of some sort, right? That even if she was to say something kind to me, I don't care. I just don't care what she thinks of me because I've got Big Mama at home. So who are you, right? So there's that. A way that you served me recently was I started a website and I wrote a blog a blog and you read it and edited it, and you did a lot of editing. It took her an hour and a half. I was thinking it was gonna be like 5-10 minutes. Like, oh yeah, you just proofread it, fix my spelling because I'm not, I suck with grammar.
I thought you would be mad for me, like critiquing you. It was very critical.
She was, but it's my first blog post. She's written lots of blog posts, and so like it was fine, right? But like that was the way I asked her to serve me, right? That's a small thing. Like she didn't have to. She could be like, no, especially since I'd already published it. So like she could be like, no, you already published it. Why am I touching it now? So and that for me that was the service. The gift giving was something. She buys me peanut M&Ms. That's my favorite candy, right? Like, and that is such a small thing. You think, oh, it's just peanut M&Ms, but it's the thought. It's the thought that you were at the store and went, you know what? I'm gonna get him some peanut M&Ms, right? It's a few dollars. It's not like something, but in that moment, who were you thinking about? You were thinking about me. You weren't thinking about others, and so like, that's why that's in there. So if for some reason I can't imagine a situation where this happened, like where somebody were to buy me a gift, I'm like, oh, great, thank you, like, and I can just be gratitude and not be like, oh well, my wife doesn't buy me gifts, but Susie down here does. And then let's see, for quality time, like yesterday, we just went on a date. We went to the temple and then we went and got some sushi, right? Like, and just we pretty much for the most part just spent the whole day together. Like, so we had some quality time, and sometimes that quality time for us is like we just watched a movie, right? So like that, right? She spent quality time with me. She chose that we were going to do this, and then the last thing for physical touch now is we cuddle, right? Like we've cuddled, and I'm going to express something about myself that she does not particularly like this, but this is important to me. Is I like to be held like a baby, like like a baby wants skin.
Big spoon.
Want not just that, but like a baby would when you're a new parent, they say, oh, to bond with your baby, you need skin to skin time. So she doesn't really like this, but I am like, yep. Take your clothes off and be big spoon and hold me so I get my skin to skin time, right? Like that's stupid, right? And obviously I'm not going to be in a situation where I'd be in that with like another woman. But that's a way, like for me, my big love language is physical touch. So if I went 40 days without any cuddling, without any spooning and all that, like, and you could even say physical intimacy, right? Like sex, right? If you go this long period of time where your spouse isn't getting that from you, in any of these categories really, then when somebody else gives that or offers it to them, they're more likely to seek it.
Yeah, and I think we need to look up the stats for like why people get divorced, but I think the last I read it was like the number one is cheating.
Mm-hmm.
And to have a cheat proof marriage, so much of the time the person that did the actual act of the cheating gets blamed, and I feel like the other person plays the victim when we may have a unique point of view. We think like both are at fault.
Yeah.
Because like a person doesn't get to, right? Like it grows. Some person doesn't just wake up and say, oh, I need to cheat on my husband today. Like it's something that's been brewing, like this drought that we're talking about. And I think, if you haven't kissed your spouse in 40 days and then they're at the office late one night and the secretary's still there, mm-hmm. and they have a crush on you and they go to kiss you, like they're probably you're not gonna stop it.
Yeah, you're less likely to.
Yeah, you're less likely to. And I think, for women, if you've gone 40 days without being appreciated or told that you're loved, or shown any sign of appreciation, if someone says like a thank you or like wants to give you that, then you're not going to turn it down. And so having a cheat-proof marriage, I think, is on you. First of all, like we need to put it on you to
not cheat,
to prevent that, not to cheat, to not cheat, but like also help your spouse cheat. Because when you're the one doing the actions, it helps both of you.
Yeah.
right? Because like if I'm getting my husband peanut M&Ms every time I go to the store, I'm thinking about him, and then he's going to be thinking about me when he gets those M&Ms and when he eats them.
Yeah.
And that's just one side of it. And my receiving language is love language is more words of affirmation, and so he's way better about. He texts me so much all day.
That's true.
And I like, you look at my phone and I don't respond nearly as much. I need to be better, but like he tells me every day that he loves me, and he's proud of me and thanks me and all of that. And so every day, he's thinking of me, and then I read those and I'm thinking of him, and so there's no reason for me to need to go outside of that.
Right. And something I just want to say, like from my point of view of just this, is what kind of why I wanted to share this, like especially talk about all the things that you've done for me in the past week. Is I've been in that situation where like I was working and there was a girl and I felt like she had interest in me, but like, I was like, I don't care. As my brother-in-law Rob likes to say, like why have a cheap hamburger when you've got steak at home, right? Like so, like I'm like I don't care about like I care about you. I love you as like a child of God, but like I don't like you could have interest in me. I don't care because guess what? When I go home, Casey's there. Like, and so like I don't need you. I'm not starving, right? I'm getting my attention, and something also. So we talked about like physical cheating, but I think there's also emotional cheating, right? Like so
Yeah, for sure.
so you may not physically sleep with somebody else, but like, what if you're just emotionally with somebody else?
Yeah, and I think that's when like when your first reaction is to vent to somebody else other than your partner, or to like share some good news that you've received with somebody else other than your partner.
Right.
I think that's a dangerous road.
Yeah. Kind of go along that. I remember my mom talked about at some point in their marriage, my dad would call his mom like every day. And so, like, she was home with the kids all day. He, on his drive home, would call his mom, or like he would get home and call his mom and talk to her for like an hour. He would have told her everything about his day. And my mom was like, yeah, you didn't tell me though. So, like, she was starving for just adult conversation, right?
Yeah.
like just, but also, like, well, he'd already gotten everything off his chest with his mom. Now, was he cheating on my mom with his mom? No, but like there's that, and so
it takes away from your relationship.
Yeah, it's so easy to. I think this is more danger because I read this in like an enzyme years ago that it's more of a woman thing, that men were more likely to cheat physically, but women are more likely to have like an emotional relationship with somebody else, where there may not be any physical aspect to it, but they are telling them everything. They're sharing their most intimate thoughts with another person besides their spouse.
Yeah. Because we had different needs, and it took me a while to realize that with like love and respect. Yeah, because I didn't think that it was that harmful, but yeah, women want to feel loved and men want that respect and physical attention.
Yeah. Which, by the way, that's the book I was referencing that I thought we'd talk about another podcast that I had that quote from. Yeah, so those were just my thoughts. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I did want to talk about like we've been together 11 years.
That's true.
Maybe we should have like an intro.
Yes.
Intro post that's, or maybe we should have talked about that first, so like we know what we're talking about.
Somewhat, right? Like obviously we haven't hit that 50-year mark, but we've been together for over a decade.
I remember what it was I want to say. Yeah, being together 11 years, and I've seen so many people get married around the same time or after us that are not together, that have gotten divorced. Mm-hmm. And I think, and for us, I just feel like we've gotten closer and closer, and it really is like becoming one, and I couldn't imagine not being with Ben. And so, and I think a big part of that is like we have this goal of sticking together, having a successful marriage. And so you have to work through it when there's no other option.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And over time it's gotten easier and easier for us to work through things, and like us, and sometimes, and we could have an episode about fighting too, but
Yes, I think we will have an episode about fighting.
About fighting. So like, yeah, we still fight, and I think it's healthy because we're two separate human beings still with different backgrounds, but like, I know I can usually get to like the root of the problem a lot faster. We work things out a lot faster than when we were first married.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, where I it's taken me a while to get the words to express what I'm actually feeling, like why I'm upset. Because I used to just like, I would just blast out of nowhere and start yelling. You're like, what are you yelling about? This is not that big of a deal.
Like implode, yeah, over something little.
Which is just a bad habit of mine, which we'll talk about maybe another time.
But I think we both had to communicate, because like neither of us, I think, really had healthy relationships growing up to look to.
Yes.
To learn how to communicate with your spouse. And then everybody tells you that, right? When you get married, is like, what's your marriage advice? Communicate. And they don't talk about what that means.
Right.
It's not just like, how was your day? Talking
Right.
about, but just being able to express yourself in a healthy way, and having those intimate conversations with your partner on a regular basis.
Yeah. One big thing that we're on this subject is one of the reasons like I can express my feelings is it's a safe place for me to express, right? Like that I can like be like, this is bothering me. This isn't, instead of holding it in. Because when you talk about like we didn't grow up with a healthy relationship. Like I grew up with my parents. They should have gotten divorced in 1991. Something happened. One of them did something major. The other one never forgave them. They got divorced in 2012, the same year we got married. Like, so I really grew up. I was 3 years old all the way up until I was 23. Yeah, when we got married, right? That like I wasn't a healthy marriage at all. And so like it's hard to like find that example. I didn't really grow up with that example. And so I think that also helped us or hurt us the beginning of our marriage with like, I didn't know what a healthy marriage looked like. So,
yeah. And so that's why, like, it's a big motivator for this podcast to help people learn these things, especially, if you're about to get married or want to get married eventually, or just got married. The first year is definitely adjustment, but I also think like we definitely did have that honeymoon puppy love for like 5 years.
That's true.
We probably still do.
That's true.
A lot of people think, because we got married young.
We did,
like a lot of people think. But yeah, I think we were just both very committed to staying together. We've had a lot of ups and downs. Yeah. And nobody I'd rather do it with.
Yeah, my honey bunny. All right. Well, I'm Ben. This is Kaci. This is Man in Marriage. Best of luck. May the Lord bless you.
Mm-hmm.